Today's unfortunate pile of ones and zeros may look like your typical fantasy hack and slash romp, but actually it is one of the grand prizes in Kusoge Safari, as its 36 Metacritic average makes it the worst reviewed game of the year 2019, managing to beat such heavyweights as Contra Rogue Orbs, WWE 2K20 and Left Alive. And its Steam percentage of 39 doesn't promise good things either. So let's go to dishonor Norse mythology and swim to the depths of eternity, the last unicorn. Yeah, I'm not going to redo that.
This game is to my knowledge the debut work from both its producers Luis Ricardo Acuena and Danilo Pereira, from which the former also did level design and the latter did writing. I wasn't able to find much information about it, only some general how to make your game article from Mr. Acuena at a site called Drops the Jogos, which used this game as an example. Based on what I read between the lines, this seems to be the classic case of fresh new developers biting more than they can chew. The story's gist is that the elves living in the world of Alfheim have enjoyed the blessings of immortality thanks to the balancing power of their goddess Maria's gift unicorns that are these horn-headed horses. Suddenly, dark forces steal them, aside from the one who was left severely wounded, so a young elf lass who has been prophesied to be the only one capable of restoring his powers is sent for the rescue mission. Thus, Aurehen embarks on a journey to find the source of the dark curse of death and save the last unicorn, whose name, by the way, is Grani and not Eternity like the title may allude to.
I'm not a super expert on Norse mythology, but this game's interpretation of it reminds me more of a stereotypical high fantasy fare instead of the raw brutality that I usually associate it with. I mean, you don't have to show Loki humping a horse or anything, but this game's view of it is abnormally sanitized. But before I get more into the storyline, let's talk a bit about the gameplay that is specifically made to harken back to the hack and slash affairs of the PlayStation 2 era. You do know that when today's reviewers say that something reminds them of a PlayStation 2 game, they don't mean it as a compliment, right?
In the game you go through linear levels with branching paths while killing undead, goblins and other such nasties, though there are puzzles sprinkled here and there. Most of these actions are however cumbersome to do. It feels that controls were designed with controllers in mind, because at least with mouse and keyboard turning is clumsy, which in turn makes battles clunkier than they need to be. As for battles, Aurahen's skill repertoire includes normal attack, a more powerful attack, and super powerful attack gotten after enough kills/damage, the usual. However, she has no blocking move, so she has to instead dodge in order to avoid attacks, but due to clumsy controls and predetermined camera angles sometimes blocking the view, that is very unreliable, especially when enemies pile on you or when a dead enemy blocks you. It's moments like this that make me lament for the lack of a jump command.
There is some relief available once Aurehen gets access to bow, which can help in thinning the enemy hordes. Though as a caveat, it makes the game easy, and first that doesn't sound like a bad thing, but because there's not much enemy variation in their types, it makes it repetitive instead. But hold on, there's a surprise second player character.
He is Björn, the son of a late Viking king who Aurehen runs into in the cursed forests and unknowingly heals him from the brink of death. He is here to look for his comrades who... wait, what they were doing here again? One of the many things this game fumbles with is sharing information. Often when it's time to switch characters, the next portion starts straight from the gameplay without any hints on what to do and why. It does share lore though with these separate journal entries dedicated to characters, monsters and even places, which is a commendable effort, but this feels like stuff that can be delivered naturally through dialogue.
The said dialogue is clunky but serves its purpose. Though in its presentation it is evident how cheap the production values are due to stock sound effects that start any conversation. Though it is always amusing when the resident dwarfsmith starts all his talks with a singular loud. I understand that this game's budget wasn't probably big, but that reasoning can only carry you so far. The graphics are decent, though that is more about Unreal Engine's strength at building outdoor areas than any stylistic choice from the developers. Oh, and here's another surprise. There are role-playing elements. Kind of.
Sure, you get levels, which can be crucial lifesavers as getting one heals you to full health. Yet, if I understood this system correctly, it only affects to your attack and defense stats, because hit point maximum is raised by finding these amulet healths, which further underlines what nervous tippy-toe in battles are in the beginning. Speaking of amulets, there are items available at chest and shops for healing and power-upping purposes, though because of how clumsy the combat is, you need to take on account when is the best moment to use them. And before you ask, yes, this game has crafting, but I'll get to that in a bit.
Now, what have I forgotten? Oh right, how Björn differs from Aurehen as a fighter. Well, like in any Broly fighter slash feinty ranger comparisons, he is slower but hits harder, and as an additional tool, he gets a shield. Sure, it offers one more way to protect him from harm, but it also makes him unbearably slow, which emphasizes the aspect that showcases all the problems with battles. Bosses.
There are these bigger mooks that may not technically count as bosses because you won't get an achievement from defeating them, but you do get this definitely not Dark Souls text commemorating your victory. Taking down this piece is self-repeating due to them repeating few attack patterns and insane amounts of health burning any encounter against tougher enemies into sluggish busy work, so you can imagine how bad it is with actual bosses. The Spider Queen isn't that bad, even if dodging its attacks with low health pool is stress-inducing. But then comes the corrupted Wolf Guardian Ulfster and... I mean, look how slowly his health bar decreases. Even a kitchen knife would do more damage. I was stuck in this battle for half an hour in total, 15 minutes for the successful run, which pales in comparison to the first fight against Valkyrie Skjögul that took 45 minutes. Or it would have if I hadn't died right after, and because the game didn't bother to save after a boss encounter, I had to start from the previous save point and use 20 more minutes to it. By that time I was so exhausted with how the combat, the main selling point of a hack and slash, constantly refused to let me have fun, and after so wondering it was revealed that in order to get the next key to progress, players need to craft it. But first, they need ingredients from specific monsters, meaning that the game forces you to grind in specific areas that makes the level structure that leans on revisiting places as two characters over and over again seem even more tedious. Yeah, I'm done here.
I think I managed to reach the 1/3 of the game completed requirement I have set for myself. At least I hope so, because Eternity the Last Unicorn doesn't respect your time.
Admittedly, I didn't experience that much of a story, partly because it takes ages to get to the point, but what I did experience was cliched and aimless. Visuals are somewhat competent though, character models are rough, but sound effects have little impact, and music is generic enough that I didn't bother to mention it until now. However, the awkward combat is what condemns this hack and slash title to the deepest depths of Hell's domain, as it is slow and simple slashing against damage spawns enemies. Puzzles were adequate, but that's not nearly enough to save the whole.
At least both Mrs. Aquena and Pereira were able to recover with the co-op fantasy shoot-em-up Cassiodora that seems to be much better received. Though Mr. Aquena did try to return to hack and slash by project managing Avatar The Last Airbender Quest for Balance. Suddenly that game's design choices make so much sense. Also yeah, there was no doubt that Eternity wouldn't have a place in my bottom 100 list, so it's time to leave for Pitfall! A surprisingly decent game for its era, and its rudimentary platforming can offer some satisfaction, But after a while, this jungle treasure hunt loses its novelty. I did find after finishing it that there is a possible way to get all treasures before the timer runs out and thus win the game. But would have that significantly affected its rating? Well, it managed to leave the list, so that question is now pointless.